know or have ever heard. And we were in a band together for like 4 or 5 years called Bear Attack. And um, he is a session musician. He's a touring musician. He's toured all over the United States. He's been all over the world. Um, and he can play rock. He can play jazz. He can, I don't know how much classical stuff you do, but, um, but he can do it all. He's one of my faves. So I thought he would be a great fit for this, just to kind of show you some of the stuff he knows. And I hope you use him on all of your songs, because this is a great opportunity for you.
Jordan, you want to introduce Eddie?
Yeah, absolutely. So Eddie and I know each other through multiple circles that we kind of run in, but like Eddie is from the Kalamazoo area, which is about an hour and 20 minutes away from where I go to school in Lansing, Michigan. So we're both Michigan-based composer performers. And Eddie is the performer composer that I'm trying to be. He is like just out of this world. First of all, like a really great and super cool person, but like makes super dope music, and it's not in one specific genre. It's kind of all over the place. It draws from a lot of different places. He plays the saxophone. He's a dope composer. He's won several awards, including this year's Johnny Mandel Prize through the ASCAP Foundation. And he is working with the Jack Quartet right now and doing like a lot of like interdisciplinary different things. And I felt like Eddie would be the perfect person to kind of throw in the mix here, because he is a composer as well, proudly, and can give you a lot of insight about composing from the jazz perspective or composing from the saxophone, and also just dipping into different genres. So that's Eddie. Randall, you're muted.
Now I'm not. I wanted both Brandon and Eddie to play a little bit and give you an idea about what they can do and what they like to do, and sort of invite you, each of you, to try something out with these guys and see what they might be able to do. And they're going to at least talk a little bit about their preferred approach to performing and composing. So I'd let Brandon. You want to go first? You want to try?
Yeah, sure. Oh man, does that sound crazy to you guys? Is there?
It's pretty crackly.
It's very
It's
fuzzy.
so crackly. Yeah, I'm hearing some crackly vibes in my end too. Hold on. Oh man, this was working just fine yesterday.
I know. We practiced this last night. It was totally cool.
No, it's still. Is it still crackly, guys?
Yeah.
It's crackly.
Yeah.
Oh man, what happened?
A backup plan could be, do you have an amp? Or I don't know.
I do. I mean, I could just play acoustic guitar too. I feel like that could be easier.
Yeah, that's true. You can do acoustic.
Yeah. If Eddie wants to go first, I can just mute and then just kind of set something up real quick.
Yeah, sure. Can you guys
Yeah.
hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Eddie. Thanks so much, Jordan, for that intro. Yeah, so I have my saxophone here, and I can talk to you guys a little bit about what it's like to write for saxophone and what it's like to write for me. And I have got a piece here from a friend that's kind of a really good example of what I like to see and that sort of thing. So I guess I will start with that. Let's see, can I share my screen here?
Now you can.
Okay, cool. That's me. Okay, so let's see here. So this is something I would normally see. So I'll kind of start with like the basics. So this is a tune called LLT is Back, written by my dear friend Yakov Svitinsky. He's from Ukraine. He's an amazing trumpeter and composer and producer. Um, so first things first, the I play the tenor saxophone, which is keyed in B flat. So my C sounds as a concert B flat. Um, so whenever you're writing, I think like the first mistake people make is transposition and all that, which is something you can do pretty easily if you're scoring. So what I have here is this melody here. So that's just these notes. It's pretty easy to play, and I have some chords above that. So on a chart like this, I would call this a lead sheet. Um, because basically, just because there are chords up here, that doesn't really mean I'm gonna play them. Um, or solo over them. So usually when I see chords, that usually means, oh, the composer's trying to tell me to improvise. Um, but in a lead sheet, there's probably going to be chords everywhere because the person's making a chart quickly and just wants everything to be the same. Um, so let's see, I have this melody here, and let's see here. Melody keeps going, keeps going. So here at 43, the composer has written out a solo. So this is where I would solo, and you can tell that this is different because he has like these diamond-shaped notes. Um, Normally, you'd see either these or slashes, um, and the diamond-shaped notes just indicate the rhythm that's going on behind me, and um, that's super important for me to know because it's important for me to know what's happening around me. So like this is what the rhythm section is playing. So bass, guitar, drums, piano. So it's good for me to know what's going on around me. And then the solo continues. He has some instructions after last solo, go to drum solo. Um, so that's sort of just like some roadmap stuff if you're making something quick. And I will now kind of dive into this melody a little bit so you can kind of hear what it sounds like on the saxophone and like what's easy for me to play. So let me just get my instrument real quick. All right, can you guys hear this? Good. Okay. So I'm gonna start here at A1. So this is where the melody actually comes in. Um, this part up here, the intro, that's well, the intro. So I'm just gonna play here at A1. So it's kind of a slow version of this melody. So a couple things about this melody. First off, since my friend is a trumpet player, I would probably play this up an octave, even though where I played it is where it's written for me in my octave. But as a trumpet player, his is going to sound an octave above. So to be in unison with him, I'd probably play it up an octave. So that's something you can sort of you can sort of ask me like, hey, like, is this too high to play? Um, there's not really. I have like a 4.5 octave range, so I can go pretty high, but I can't go below and like what is it, A flat 3 or something, concert A flat 3. So be aware of that. But in terms of this melody, uh, when it comes to the saxophone, you can pretty much write any sort of linear line. Keep in mind we do have to breathe, but you can pretty much get away with writing anything. Unlike the trumpet, range doesn't really affect our stamina, so I can play pretty high for pretty long, pretty low for pretty long. Not to say that you can kind of go crazy with it, but bear in mind there's a little bit of leeway with that. I'm gonna play this melody up the octave so you can hear how that sounds. So up the octave, it's a little bit different timbre, and the fingerings are a little bit different for me. So on the fly, you can say like, "Hey, why don't you take this up the octave? Why don't you take this down the octave?" Usually, that's something I can do pretty quickly. Um, so yeah, and I also have this tune. Sorry, I only know I have 10 minutes. I also have this tune um, uh, kind of mapped out in Ableton for those of you who are who aren't notating your music. You're sending me a track. I wanted to show you kind of what that looked like for me as well. So so a lot of times people will send me tracks nowadays, especially now during quarantine, and they won't really send me written music. I haven't really read music in quite a while. Um, they'll send me, just audio files, and it's kind of my job uh, to learn by ear and see how that works out. Can you guys hear this? Can you hear it? Okay, good. So this is the same tune in uh, in my DAW. So basically, if you want to send me like, hey, I have a like a drum track, I have bass, and I have keys, and I want you to learn this melody. You can do that. You just have to let me know like where the melody is. Like for example, here I have written out the melody in this synthesizer up here. So if you listen to that, so that's the melody. So what I would do if I were you is I'd say, hey, I've got these keys, I've got this bass, I've got this drum stuff, um, and I want you to learn the melody. That's also something that I can do. It takes a little bit longer just because I have to learn it by ear. So maybe be a little bit wary of that, but that is an option if you're not trying to write anything down on paper. Um, but yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Are there any like questions about anything you guys have?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So the tracks that you are getting now that are not notated, would it save you time? Would it improve the understanding or the communication if you had something written down on paper and then you were allowed to learn that and then go with what's going on?
I think me personally, it would probably be faster to notate it. Um, that way I can, if it's pretty sight readable, and I'm not the best sight reader, but I can play it quickly. If I need to practice it, I can practice it. Um, it's right in front of me. I don't have to memorize it. Basically, if you send something to me in a track, I basically have to like memorize it and really learn it, which is a better way to learn, but it just takes a little bit longer. Um, so if we're going for brevity, I would say to notate it and send it to me.
Okay. And can you play with this track?
Yeah, so I can play with this track. Yeah, sure, I can do that.
Great. what I heard was some of the things that are going to be questions.
Mhm.
If you're writing for Eddie and you're sending tracks, he can actually play with them. But I couldn't hear you. You're playing very well, Eddie. Is that
Oh,
just the balance between the different parts?
yeah, that might be. I haven't really calibrated
Got it.
what's going on here. Yeah, I did
Okay.
record a saxophone track in here. If you want to hear what it's like.
No, I think
Okay.
that was really helpful. I mean, it's important because we're asking for the option of having a sort of a consult on
Mm-hmm.
Saturday. You can say, okay, I'm ready to record your piece.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk on Zoom for this a little bit. And you go, oh, okay, that I understand. You can get some coaching ideas what you can do as a performer
Mm-hmm.
with you, and then you'll record. The Zoom will not continue, but you'll get
Right.
a chance to consult.
Cool. Yeah. Totally.
That's great. Um, were there any other questions? This is an opportunity for you to ask, like, practical issues, like how do you improvise on that stuff, or that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody have any thoughts?
I have a question.
Yep.
I know that there are other like sizes of saxophone, like alto and soprano saxophones. Is this an instrument where you can easily switch between one and the other?
So I only have a tenor. I'm kind of I would get slapped on the wrist by my teacher for only having one saxophone. So normally you'd ask your performer like, hey, do you have this saxophone or that stuff? In terms of saxophone players, there's kind of like usually people either play alto or tenor. Those are the most common. But you can expect someone usually to either, if they play alto or play tenor, to have a soprano. That's usually something most people will have. There are people who play baritone saxophone, but that's not as many. And soprano, alto, tenor, and baritone are kind of the four most common saxophones you'll see. So,
Thank you.
mm-hmm.
We're gonna go. Yeah, go ahead.
I will say, Rando, I think you brought up something good about improvisation. So I'll kind of go into depth a little bit more about that. Let's see, where am I looking for? Okay, so in terms of improvising, um, I improvise in a lot of different settings. So, for example, what's going on here is he has like um, a very set chord progression here. Um, so you know, basically, I'm these are the chords that's gonna be happening around me. I mean, I don't have to play them, but it would sound good if I did. And you'll notice that this section here is only 4 bars, and that's kind of open. And on cue, I mean, this is more for live stuff, but on cue, that just means that if we're playing in a band, it's my job to then tell them when to go into this section. So that's something that I'm in control of as a soloist. Um, and as well as, so that's sort of like roadmap stuff. In terms of harmony, this is very Western functional harmony, but there are settings in which I have played where there's no harmonic scheme at all, or it's um, very structured. Like I don't know, like if you're thinking of Giant Steps by John Coltrane, where there's a lot of harmony happening at the same time.
Mhm.
So there's a pretty wide range of harmonic settings that I've improvised in. So you can pretty much throw whatever you'd like, and I'll figure out a way to make it sound okay, or at least I'll try. So
Cool. Any other questions? I'll let Brandon come in. Brandon, would you are you set up with the sound at this point?
I'm gonna see if that's not too crackly, right?
No, it's not crackly at all.
Okay, cool. If it gets crackly again, then I could switch over to acoustic, but
Okay.
I think this will work for now.
I don't know if I don't think I'm hearing it come through the computer.
Oh, you're not? Hold on.
Hey, Eddie, thanks very much.
yeah, thank you.
That was awesome.
Very cool, Eddie.
Yep, we got it.
There we go.
Still a little bit of crackling in there. Let's see if I can fix that.
It's pretty good though.
Sorry about all the technical difficulties, guys.
I think I would be more concerned if we weren't having any technical difficulties. So,
all right, well, I'm gonna try to play, and if it gets a little too crackly, then I'll switch over to acoustic. So I guess I'll just play Moon River. Do you guys know that song, Moon River? Yeah.
It's an old man's tune, but yes, we know that tune.
I just realized I didn't have a chart for it, so I just wrote it out on Sibelius really fast. Or yeah, so these are the chords, at least the way I'd interpret it. I tried not to make anything too specific in terms of harmonic choices, even like major 7 or just like a regular major chord. I just kind of left that pretty vague. And the way I want to interpret this right now, just because we were talking about recording, a lot of time guitar is used as an auxiliary instrument. And so it's great to play this song with all your little harmonics, whether it's like adding diminished chords or passing chords or tritone substitutions, all these like cool things we learn in music school. But a lot of times when you go in, at least as a guitar player, and actually any instrument, could be a keyboard player, they're not going to want you to do a lot of these things. So it's kind of crucial to know how to make the most out of not too much, if that makes sense. So I'm going to go ahead and just interpret this much more simply than just trying to fill up. It's rather than just filling up as much as I can harmonically or with all the notes, I'm going to try to make the most out of my instrument and just play the melody. So. Okay,
Great.
definitely some crackling, but whatever.
Great.
But you guys kind of get the gist of that. Like, I'm not, there's always a place for like solo guitar players to kind of really deck this song out, all these tricks that we learn as guitar players to play all these like really cool things. But at least for recording, I mean, I'm gonna stop sharing the screen. How many guitar players are there, by the way? Are there none, or are there a couple? None. Okay. Yeah. So I would imagine you guys, at least in the world of like jazz or pop, like nothing is worse than a guitar player that overplays, and that goes for any instrument. But for some reason, I feel like guitar players, they just want to overplay because they don't have to breathe, and so they just have to do this all the time. You know what I mean? And it could be frustrating in the recording studio. You know what I mean? Well, so here's the thing. So I know that a lot of you guys are not guitar players, so I think it's crucial to be able to talk to guitar players and let them know what you're looking for. And like a lot of times that involves being in the studio and just having like a real clear idea of what you want, whether it's like rhythm parts. As you can see, this guitar, I chose this guitar because it's a really common guitar, Stratocaster. I'm sure all of you guys have seen this guitar before.
Right.
And a lot of times I'm not playing big chords like this, or I'm not playing like jazz chords. That's probably not what I'm going to play, right? Like I'm probably going to be playing something more along the lines of like something like that. You know what I mean? If it's like something funky, stuff like that. If I'm going to be playing chords, I'm probably not going to be playing too many filler in between the chords. I'm probably not going to be playing stuff like that. Like, a lot of times it's just going to be, and literally that's it. But there is an art to making the most out of it. Like, do you want something real mellow? If I go to the bridge, that alone is so different. And then I have these pickups right here. So if you hear that is alone has so many different tones to work with, and they all serve a different purpose, if that makes sense. So I definitely am not going to be talking too much about harmonies or things like that, like when to add like a sharp 5 or any of those things. It's more about like tone of the guitar, which is what is appropriate. And I think that's something that is really important to keep in mind, because sometimes you're going to meet that guitar player to come into record into your project, and he's just going to be like playing all these things that he loves, and alone might sound great, but it's,
I'm curious
you
if
gotta
you
think about the context. I think
how
that's
do
really
you
important.
how do you notate the
Randall,
rhythms?
are you saying something?
Yeah. How do you notate the rhythms that you're being asked to play? Are you just coached verbally, or is that something that's written down?
Oh, can you say that one more time? I'm sorry. I had.
Yeah. Can you the rhythms that you're asked to play? Are you given that notes in the studio and saying, okay, sort of like this, check it, check it, check it, check it, check it, check it, or is it written down in some way?
No, usually, I mean, these days, to be completely honest, I mean, unless you are, so my experience, I do get called to do sessions like where they write a chart. They're like, hey, this is recording day. We all get into a studio. Just read down this chart. We read down the chart. And then they're like, great. And that's the gig. But a lot of times, if I'm recording for friends or people in the pop industry, whether it's like R&B music or stuff that's like a little more produced, it's a lot of times it's in someone's house, or it starts off that way, especially guitar. Like I'm not even using an amp. Like I'm just going through an interface, literally DI, and a lot of times what you hear on the radio, that's what's going on. I'm using a guitar DI processing amp right now, but if I turn it off, my guitar sounds like that, like kind of thin and not so much definition. And actually sometimes that's cool. A lot of guitar players, like, because they're just kind of hear themselves by themselves, they think, oh, like that guitar tone sucks. But again, context, like sometimes a straight DI is the vibe. You know what I mean? I promise you, a lot of these songs you hear on the radio is straight up DI guitar, no amp, no nothing. And they just process all that stuff on Ableton, add the reverb, do all that stuff on whatever recording software. So
Brandon, what does DI mean?
Oh, it's going directly into your computer, literally, like into your interface. So, yeah, some things to consider when using a guitar player. Yeah, regardless of the music, even jazz, because when a jazz guitar player is comping, you got to find the right tone. You probably don't want to use like a bright Strat tone you don't want to play jazz like you probably don't want to play it like that, right? You
No.
probably, if it's like something a little more old school, probably playing something like that, to be honest. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going to be playing something a little more active, like all these things, like me using my thumb, turn down the tone knob, that's an appropriate tone for jazz, And then as you can see behind me, I have a ton of guitars. But, I think a lot of times people will invite me over to their house and they just say, oh, yeah, like bring a guitar. And then, and they're just like, I want like just this vibe. But like, I think it's best to like really take advantage of a guitar player's ability to make a ton of different tones. That's one advantage of having a guitar player. You know what I mean? So, and what I'll do is I'll even play some different guitars and you'll hear that, wow, there is a drastic difference between a Strat and a guitar with humbuckers or a guitar with P90s, And I'm not even, I'm just literally using reverb and going directly into the computer. That alone, you can get a lot of different sounds. So,
could you play a different guitar and get that would show a variety or a contrast to what you've done?
So remember this, you guys hear this guitar? Remember that tone, right?
Yeah, okay.
Right. So that's a vibe, but I'm gonna change it up real quick. So if you look at this guitar, this says humbuckers. So what's going on here is, as opposed to like a bunch of single pickups like that, these have two pickups. It's just like a little guard in front of it, but it's two pickups together. And you can imagine these pickups, all it is, they're just like little microphones picking up sounds, you know what I mean? So now I have a different guitar and check it out. Totally different, right? You guys totally hear the difference right from the get-go. It's much louder. This guitar is louder and it's much quieter. If you heard the other guitar, there's always like a going on, right? And yeah, like this guitar it's a different vibe, Totally different vibe. You know what I mean?
I feel like I hear the strings more.
Yeah, no, totally. And that has to do with you're getting
pickup.
More output. Yeah, you're getting more pickup. And so one example, if you guys want like a rock vibe, right? You want to use something, oh yeah, like I want you to use distortion or overdrive, like that crunchy sound you get from a guitar. On that Strat with that one pickup, you're going to get a lot of noise and it's not going to be able to take those pedals as well. Whereas a guitar like this is perfect for rock. You get warmer tone out of this. You know what I mean?
Could you play a solo or something that you either rhythm or solo using the humbucker?
Oh man, it's getting pretty crackly, but yeah, let's say they were like, oh, I want like just a Hendrixy vibe or something more like Prince or something, And I'm not gonna be playing I'm not playing like anything like that, but even just sometimes you'll want just that guitar vibe in your song, just like one note, but the tone really means everything. Trying to get the right vibe.
Notate that.
How would you notate that? Yeah, so you could treat these things as like little swells, like or like a those
glissando?
Little glissando works. It's a little vague on guitar, but to be honest, like charts, like instead of using, I know there's like these official terms to use and these official little swishes and stuff, but just write it out. You know what I mean? Because I feel like a guitar, the nature of the guitar, there's so many possibilities that you're better off just like sending a chart beforehand or talking about it before and be like, yo, like this is the vibe I'm trying to like put out there. You know what I mean? Like I want like maybe something that's like got distortion and use examples. There's nothing wrong with being like Purple Rain, Prince, like, you know, like that guitar tone he has. So as a guitar player, being guitar nerd, it's like, oh, okay, I got the vibe already. It's like you want a chorusy guitar, you want like real 80s, super like cheap sounding, super shreddy sounding guitar. That's a Prince vibe, right? Or let's say you want like a, oh, actually, I changed my mind. I want like let's say you're doing like a more like jazzy chart. Like I want like a Wes Montgomery vibe, you know? Then if you just put Wes Montgomery vibe, that says a lot already. You know what I mean? So little things like that. Like you don't have to use like these terms you've necessarily like learned in like classical like theory or like jazz theory all the time. Like of course, like there's a place for that, especially even on guitar. But when it comes to recording and trying to get the right tone, totally fine to just write out something as long as it's not like a paragraph, you know? So yeah, some things to keep in mind.
Yeah, Brandon, I'm so glad that you said that, because I was literally, if you didn't say it, like I was going to say it, like composers, like especially if you're writing notated music, the score is where you communicate with the players. So if they're not getting what the vibe is, or like what kind of world you're trying to create from the information not being on the score, then you haven't done your job. So
Exactly.
put all of that information in the score, put all of that information on the chart, so you don't have to have that awkward conversation like, oh, like I don't know, it's kind of this, like just figure it out, find the words for it beforehand, put it on the page, and then if they have questions, you can clarify. But like the score is how you communicate with the players. So whatever you need to tell them, put it on the score.
Yeah,
Eric,
totally.
you've worked with Brandon. What sort of things did you put on the score or didn't put on the score that you wish you had, that give him an idea about the sound?
I mean, a lot of times Brandon, working in a band with him, he would create his own parts. So we were all like songwriting, composing together. But honestly, a lot of times we would just sing at each other. So I feel like the human voice is a great medium. Just like, oh, I want something like, wow, you know, like whatever. I've never did that. I would never do what I just did. But
He's
but
done
it's
it.
easy.
No, he hasn't.
The guitar can literally sing. Like it can make so many different tones with it. So I think but I mean, yeah, I think we would just kind of communicate vocally, sing to each other,
Mhm.
tap out things to each other. I kind of want to talk about some like really basic stuff with Brandon really fast.
Go.
What is the range of a standard guitar?
Range?
Yeah.
Well, typically it's oh man, it's just like a E, like a low E. I don't. So this is middle C right here. Wow, I have like this overdriven like. Let me mellow that out. So that's middle C right there, right? So down here we got E.
Is that E2? Is that what that'd be called?
I guess so. Yeah. I'm sorry, guys. I don't know like the official.
And the guitar sounds an octave lower than what it's written. So the
Exactly,
lowest
yeah.
note, it's always in treble clef. It's the same E that's the lowest note you write for the clarinet.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and I think for guitar players especially, so guitar play it's no secret. Guitar players terrible at reading, most of them, almost all of them. Will not be as good. Of course, there are some incredible guitarists out there that are great readers, but I think it's always safe to assume that the guitar player is, you know, not going to be as strong at reading a lot of times. Wow, that's such a blanket statement I just made. Maybe that's not 100% true, but at least from my experience, like a lot of times the guitar player is the weakest link when it comes to reading. But it's not necessarily his fault. It's just so hard to read this, you know? It's like point to C, you know? It's like there's a C here, there's a C here, there's a C here. Whoops. You know, it's like 3 notes in 3 different places. It gets kind of confusing on guitar. So always treat charts as if they're like just like a guide. I think that's really crucial. And you know, a lot of times, like with guitar players, you're gonna really need to hold their hand. Like, hey, like they'll play it once, kind of their interpretation, and then you'll be like, like that's not exactly the vibe I wanted. Like, I think these are really crucial things for guitar players.
So
Yeah.
Eddie shared a lead sheet. Would that be a useful guide for you as a guitar player?
Yeah, a lead sheet is. I mean, I'm not. So I'm not necessarily saying like, oh, like don't even like write a chart for guitar. Like, of course, write a lead sheet for guitar players to see like harmonies and stuff. But I think guitar, it's like a lot of my experience also, even in jazz, is they'll just kind of show me a recording and I'll just kind of dance around what's already going on. Because very rarely, maybe not as much these days with like modern music, like I feel like there's a lot of times when guitar is not like the main base of a song, if that makes sense. You know, a lot of times the best part of guitar is that there's already something going on. Like, for example, let's say you guys have a song and there's like a main keyboard riff, and then there's already drums and there's already bass. And then maybe there's synth and all these things are going on. And then you bring in this guitar player and you're like, okay, like, can you, a lot of times, like my favorite times of recording is when I just show up and they don't have like necessarily a clear idea of what they want. They just go, hey, like, just try some things out. And they just kind of trust my judgment. You know what I mean? And a lot of times we'll spend like an entire hour or longer just recording all the possibilities, you know, with pedals, different ambient noises, different rhythmic ideas, simple ideas, but like a ton of them. And then like I feel like a lot of people that record guitar love that because they have all these things. They can delete what they don't like, they can just move things around. I personally think that's like the best way to use a guitar player in the recording.
So if you were, because you won't have like an hour with each composer here at this camp who wants to use it. So
right.
Would you say, in my mind, I'm like, okay, if they had a list of a few sounds from songs that they wanted you to try out, they could give you those examples and you could try to emulate it.
Yeah,
I think kind of a way to go.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to do it. So in this certain scenario, it's like I don't have an hour with each of you. So what you could do is like if you so you have a part right on your chart you send me, and it says funky guitar. What does that mean? Funky? Like that could mean a lot of things, right? What do you mean funky? Like you got to be specific. And instead of being like, oh, I want a chorus pedal and I want this specific rhythm, instead of that, I feel like it's always better funky guitar if you just put slash marks, chords, and then put funky guitar a la, or like something this vibe, you know, bars vibe, like Marvin vibe, or like Prince vibes. Those three vibes alone, totally different. But all three of them can be funky. You know what I mean? So, some things to consider. You know, do you want it like more neo soul? You know, do you want like?
Hey, you're starting to get all scratchy again.
Oh, do you hear me? Hello?
We can hear you, but yeah, for the last like 10 seconds, you've been pretty scratchy.
Dang it. Okay, I'm just gonna switch to my.
Now
Do you
what
guys
I'm
hear me?
yes, I'm
Okay, I'm just gonna
interested
do
in the possibilities of what happens if we have Eddie and Brandon playing together. Do you guys play it all in the same styles? Talk about that a little bit.
Sure, yeah. Well, I'm assuming Eddie, I'm assuming you did a lot of jazz, just because of the nature of the instrument.
Right.
So, I went to jazz school. Like I was in a program called Studio Jazz Guitar. It wasn't necessarily jazz focused, but I had to do jazz combos. I studied with a bunch of guys from the Yellow Jackets, and so like a lot of my curriculum was very jazz. But when I was in school, and I'm sure you can relate to this, Eddie, like when I play jazz and then I start playing other things, like there's like conflicting musical philosophies going on.
Yeah.
And you gotta like totally change the way you play and the way you think. You know what I mean? So that struggle is to like keep your identity the same in both genres, but like adapt to both. Like I feel like that sweet middle ground is like ideal. I don't know if that's kind of how you feel about it.
Yeah, I think it's the kind of the same for me. I think in my experience, because I do a lot of jazz, but I've also done like a lot of more pop stuff and hip hop and like R&B, and it's a little different for saxophone. This I think the guitar is really versatile and really able to fit in a lot of different situations. Usually for the saxophone, there's kind of like one thing, it's really known for, which is the entire jazz canon. So when I'm playing like more, more popular stuff, um, I still do have to like change kind of what I play, just because it doesn't quite, fit in the right spot. But there's still like a core uh, sound, I guess, that like when you ask for a saxophone player, you know what you're gonna get. Like you kind of know what it's gonna sound like. Um, and I think to answer that question, like what we would do together with different guitarists, I think normally since guitar can be like a really great accompanying instrument, usually in situations like that, if I'm playing with like just a guitarist, it might be guitar accompaniment with saxophone, or maybe we're playing like a melody together, and the guitarist is harmonizing with that melody, or maybe guitar is even great for like bass lines and stuff. So like maybe they're setting up a nice bass line and I'm playing over that. So that's usually what kind of happens if you're writing for guitar and saxophone.
Yeah, totally. And I think to add on to that, from my experience, I've done a couple gigs where, I mean, most gigs, not most, but a lot of jazz gigs as a guitar player, like guitar player will kind of fill that gap that the piano usually has. Like a lot of times, a guitar player will be called because there's no piano there, and they want a guitar player instead. But guitar, I think sometimes a lot of people will kind of try to interpret the guitar as if it is the piano, playing full harmonies, trying to play like piano voicings. But the reality is, like with like me just being able to play a certain number of notes at the same time, like that's going to be really hard. And so I think the approach for a guitar player, just this is just my opinion, is when I play like duo with a saxophone player, for example, like I want to approach it kind of the opposite way. I want to be a little more minimal with my approach because there's nothing worse than a chordal instrument that will step all over a saxophone player, especially because what like you were saying, like you got one tone, and you're the main melody, and so as a guitar player. Not only do I not want to step over Eddie's toes, I want to kind of also make the best out of my instrument at the same time, not trying to fill up all that sound. Because at the end of the day, it's just going to sound weird. Like it's just going to sound like you're trying to do too much, even though you're not playing as much as a piano player could. So I like to interpret guitar as the opposite way. Like play little things and really use the empty space in between to your advantage. I think to me that's what the best guitar players do. Like so in instance of jazz, like I think guys like Jim Hall. Jim Hall is probably my favorite jazz guitar player personally, but like there's a guy named Bill Frisell. If you guys haven't heard him play before, like listen to him play. Um, or like when like someone like Joe Pass or like George Benson or those kind of more swinging guitar players, when they play with like Oscar Peterson, like listen to them. They understand like their place as a guitar player. It's not to constantly be doing all this stuff. It's like I just know my place. So I think that's really important as a guitar player playing with a saxophone player.
I think another really great usage I've heard of guitar and saxophone is kind of using them both as melodic instruments. I think that's kind of like a really cool thing. Like as a composer, I'm always thinking about like what textures work together, especially in like unison or octaves. I think there's like a huge power in using unison and octaves. So, like for example, guitar and saxophone playing the same melody in unison sounds really pretty, especially because guitar, I think, is able to really like fit in like to me, it kind of has like this really, or it can have like this really neutral sound where it just fits with every other instrument. So like guitar playing in unison with piano, or playing low unison with bass, or something like that. So guitar and saxophone also has like a really nice history of playing those lines. Like for example, if you listen to Mark Turner and Kurt Rosenwinkel, they have like a really rich history of playing together. They kind of made this sound of in modern jazz, these two instruments playing together. And especially too, um, if you're working with a saxophonist, I'd say always ask like, what's your range? Like how high can you play? Because guitar, what is it, like 5 octaves? Is it like 5 or 6?
1, 2. Yeah, 5. It's 5. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you get up there with like for tenor saxophone, when you get up there and like it's really extreme high ranges, if you have a saxophone player who can do that, it sounds really nice with guitar. So that's one thing I like to think about as a composer.
Yeah. Oh. I think that's also a really good point for guitar, because I think because some composers that don't play guitar, the range is always such a mystery. So, but then also with guitar, I can tune. You know what I mean? So I have the ability to tune down.
A detuning.
Not
Yeah.
Detuning. Not ideal for some guitar players, but man, if you have like a really specific thing, like I think guitar players will really appreciate it actually, if you have like kind of a clear idea of what you want, and maybe it involves having kind of a lower sounding guitar, so as opposed to like just writing a chart kind of aimlessly, just like writing something that might be too low for the guitar, like standard tuning, that is, so yeah.
Eddie, were you going to say something?
No, I was agreeing.
All right. Unless Eric, Jordan, Sarah, Eddie, or Brandon have anything else to go, I wanted to give everyone a last chance to ask questions. You have anything you'd like to say? Ask questions. We're in good shape. It's now 1 minute before we're supposed to stop. So perfect. It's great. Thank you guys. And very helpful. Really exciting to hear what sorts of pieces we're going to hear coming out of their fingers and their ears and wherever.
Use
so thank
these
you.
people. Use them.
Use them well. Go and do. Sarah, we'll see you at 1 o'clock. Are you going to be here at 1? Yes. And Jordan, you're on at 1. Eric, I'll talk. Can you guys, the three other teachers, please stay with us. Thank you, Eddie. Let's everybody say thanks for Eddie. And thank you, Brandon.
Thank you, guys.
Fantastic. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. All right, let's goodbye, guys. I'm going to leave the faculty here so we can talk just a second. Thank you. Xander. Bye. There we go. All right. How did that go? How did that go?
Eddie and Brandon are going to be great.
They are.
Yeah.
I'm really interested to see what happened. I know some of them have no idea what they're talking about the chords and that sort of stuff. But that's part of the excitement of doing something you really don't know that much about. You just make do and let's see what happens. Do you have any other thoughts about, did we cover everything that you thought we should cover? Did we need to do anything else?
Have you found out from students who they want to study with?
No, we're going to do that. They're supposed to be filling out their forms now.
Okay.
So we'll see. We'll see at 1 o'clock. I'm sorry about screwing up the schedule somehow. I did that. I think, let me see what I'm doing here. Exit full screen. When I put together the schedule, I think I accidentally scheduled Eric and Jordan at the same time. So I've got Jordan doing today at 1, 2 o'clock. I'll be hanging around. I think it's going to be a lot of interesting conversations at 2. There's going to be, we'll also have some sort of assignments for who's teaching. And during the lounge, I'd like to at least have folks initiate when they're going to hook up for lessons, what time. So that's it for today, for right now.
I think that's the only thing I have questions about.
Yeah.
Like, so me and Jordan and I are the only ones doing private lessons, right?
Well, I'm going to leave it to the students to figure out what they're going to request. It's possible to split your 2 lessons between 2 people. And I know that Mandy wants to write a string quartet. I don't know what I said, not me. I'll be interested to see who she studies with. I said the same thing with Tim, who's studying with me. Said, not me. Find out who you want. So I don't know the answer to the question. What are they going to pick? I don't know the answer yet.
And how? Okay. So they do have 2 lessons that come with it. Do we say up front, like, if you want more?
Yes.
Then you can have more.
Yes.
But it's $25 for each extra one.
That's right.
I think the only thing I would think is I'd want to have a consensus for, like, what day do lessons begin? Are we going to start today? Are we going to start on Monday? Are we going to start tomorrow?
That's a good question. Do you guys have any preference or consensus that you have?
I would say tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'd say today or tomorrow, either one.
I'd say tomorrow for myself.
Cool.
I think I don't know if we have to have an agreement between the 4 of us.
No.
It depends what each of our schedules are, but I'd rather have it tomorrow. And we can just say, we can start, if you're going to study with me, not any earlier than Sunday. And I have no preference about days beyond that, but you guys have your own schedules.
Yeah.
And so you get to say, this is a negotiated settlement between you and the composers. So I don't know the answer. I don't think we have to come up with a consensus. We just have to agree that you get to choose. And it's something you have to negotiate with each student. So I'm going to look for these survey responses and see what we got. And I'd rather start at the beginning at 1 o'clock today saying, please fill it out now.
Yep.
If they haven't done it, let's do it. And we can, because we're doing this going directly into the lounge at 2 o'clock, we can cheat a little bit into after 2 o'clock and keep doing your session, Jordan. And then we can take a short break and start the lounge later. But I'd rather get that preference decided.
Send them a reminder with it right now.
I can do that. Yep.
And then all we have scheduled is from 1 to 3 Central.
That's right.
Okay. Cool.
And then we're done. And then it's Jordan's session, and then and at 2 to 3 Central, we'll do a lounge or whenever people leave. I'll stick around till the last dog is hung.
Is that a saying?
Yes, it is.
Huh.
Have you never heard that? Oh, that's an old, that we used to hang dogs all the time.
Okay.
Here. Oh, and I wanted to tell you, Sam sent me a text that he probably wouldn't be able to come to anything else.
Okay.
Because they are up at their cabin where there's lots of snow and they have to ski 2 hours to get to the car.
So he skied over the car. That's where he was sitting during the session today.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see.
We'll just hope that he has filled out his form.
Yep. I'll send him and I bet you he's picking up email too.
Maybe.
Yeah, we'll see.
And his piece, I played it from Google Drive. It wasn't a link.
Oh, I see.
All of a sudden said, do you have this piece of mine that you could play? And I said, well, I'll look. And I couldn't find that one, but I found another one.
Okay.
I have it all at McPhail, but I can't go there.
So Cartier is on his phone. And Sam, if he comes again, will be on his phone. Otherwise, we are all on computers.
Yes.
So I think that's good.
Good.
Any other questions?
No, I was just gonna say, like, at the end of so like for my lab today, I'm actually giving them kind of an informal assignment.
Fantastic.
So that's why I think tomorrow would be a good time to start doing lessons, because what we're gonna do is like have this discussion, and then everybody creates a line of this poem, this text that we're gonna create together.
Good.
And then the assignment is just to utilize the text in whatever way you deem appropriate in a piece. Like, you don't even have to use the actual text, you can just be inspired by it, but like you have to create something based off of it. So
Very cool.
Excellent. That's excellent. And I put the link to the GDoc that you sent me on the calendar so that they can see what you're saying.
Okay.
All
Yeah,
right.
I also made some slides, so it'll be good.
Great. That's fine. And we should record that. I will make sure that I get a recording made of that as well.
Okay.
You could do automatic recording on the meeting.